What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Power of a Growth Mindset. Joining us today is my homie, a mental health therapist and a proud native of Baltimore, Maryland, Terrill Mcknight. Terrill, what's going on, man? Welcome to the show.
Welcome, man.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. It's good to be here. As I was telling Mike, I think yesterday it was, I really bang with y'all with the platform. You know what I mean? We was talking about the positive impact that I noticed that it has, that you guys offer people to be heard here. So, the most important thing that I wanted you guys to kind of see was just that it's appreciated, whether you see it or not. This platform is definitely appreciated just by listening to other people. You allow people to kind of be heard, whatever profession that they're in, so yeah.
Well, cool, man. Cool. I was just gonna say, Mike, we appreciate it because obviously we get feedback, but hearing you come on here and just say how much you appreciate it, how others appreciate it. I mean, this is something that Mike and I, when we started this journey, we were in it to ensure that we were making an impact. And so to hear the hard work paying off, but also how many lives we're touching, we love it and we get a kick. And, again, we're looking forward to the time with you being on the show today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank y'all.
Yeah, so like kind of piggyback off of what Gandy said. When you sent me that text message the other day, I'm like, yo, I appreciate that, man, because I was at one of my lowest moments yesterday, and it was just like, yo, okay, all right, and it's just like you will never. I oftentimes hear this from my supervisor. You'll never see the harvest and all the beautiful things that you have planted. Sometimes in life, it may take up to 1 year, it may take up to 2 years, and sometimes it may take 10. But for me, it was just like the work that I'm doing is it's not going unnoticed, but at the same time, it's just like it's actually impacting people, because what you said to me in that text message was the reason why we started the platform. So again, welcome, brother. Sure. Sit back and enjoy the show with us both. And the kind of transition into like that mental health check-in, not because it's mental health awareness month, but more so that's something that we have adopted on this platform. Whenever we have guests on our show, we like to just do a little check-in with one another and kind of basically see, how's everything going for you? What are some of your I guess your proudful moments, and what are some things that you're looking forward to, just checking in with you. So how's everything going?
Yeah. So right now I'm feeling pretty comfortable, at ease. Things are going great right now. I think for me, I have a history of dealing with anxiety because I'm really goal oriented, right? We understand with anxiety is kind of living into the future and fear of things can happen. What if we're doing this right? But I think what helps me out a lot is just being present. Like right now, I think I'm feeling pretty good dealing with you fellas. You guys have really made me comfortable coming on the air. So things are okay. But yeah.
That's good, man. And speaking of that, because I kind of struggle with anxiety every now and then, and I've had my fair share of episodes, but would love to hear what are some things that you do to kind of, get yourself in the right frame or to calm yourself? Like what are some things that you incorporate day to day?
Yeah, for sure. So believe it or not, I think one biggest thing that helps me out is staying organized. I don't think we pay attention to that too much. When you're in a clean house or a clean room, it kind of puts you at ease. If you ever kind of cleaned the house up, put some smell goods, lit the candles, you know what I mean? Whatever you do, it kind of makes you comfortable. So doing stuff like that, I work out sometimes. So whenever I kind of run a couple of miles, that kind of has the edge. It makes me feel pretty good. But the most important thing that I do is just, as what we just mentioned, is really remind myself how things are okay in the moment. I think for me, oftentimes, my thoughts kind of lay in the future. Okay, I got to get this done, or I got this goal to achieve. Like I said, I'm really, really ambitious. So it's always this goal that I want to get done. But being present and saying, okay, things are doing okay. You achieved this goal already. You did this already. Pay more attention to that. I think that what helps me out a lot.
I dig that, and for me, living in the moment has been something that I try to be more intentional about, because oftentimes I do, because I'm a futuristic individual and that's one of my strengths, but I oftentimes get too caught up in the future that I forget to live, and sometimes it's hard to even understand the future if you're not even living in the moment to
That's
understand like the process that you're going through. So for me, I definitely can relate to that, but checking in with myself, man, it's a lot going on. Like as a school counselor,
Oh,
we have
word.
we have 12 and a half days left of school,
Oh,
and
wow.
I am more than thrilled to go ahead and end this semester on a
I'm
good
like,
note. But it's being an educator is it's a blessing. I love what I do. I love the kids that I work with. It's more men are needed in this particular field, but it's just being able to understand that and knowing when to not give that exploitative empathy type thing, where we do it for the outcome and not the income, because at the end of the day, you have to live, you have to be able to care for your family and do the things that you would like to do. So just finding that balance. And for me, that looks completely different. But as a mental health advocate, I think for me, in the space that I'm showing up right now, I think I'm in a good space. I'm not 100% okay, but I'm here and I'm ready to have a good time tonight and just be able to have a just fellowship with you and Gandhi. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm about an 8. Could be better, but I'm showing up.
Well, quick input. I'm sorry, Josh, but just to kind of check in, this is kind of surreal because our last meeting, we're in school, and now here you are, the school counselor route. It's like, it's you're doing your thing. So kudos to that. Just a pat on your back, man. Keep pushing.
Yeah, and bro, like if 3 years ago you would have told me I would have been a school counselor, I was like, man, get out of here. Because as you know, counselor, it was hard, man. It was really hard, especially like going through some of the things we went through in the program. It was extremely hard, but at the same time, sometimes we don't never know how things are going to turn out for us. We can have plans and God be looking at us like, yeah, you thought, but this is what you're going to do. So, I appreciate that, man. Really do.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll follow up with Mike. I think right now I'm about an 8 as well. I think truthfully, and Mike kind of preaches to me all throughout the week, like, are you taking time for yourself to get yourself in a space where you can truly thrive? Right now, just from a work perspective, like things are crazy. And so one of the biggest things that I've just been trying to incorporate is just those wellness times throughout my day, whether it's journaling, whether it's spending some time in prayer, whether it's spending some time working out, just creating a space for me to be able to thrive and just bring my best self day in and day out. It has been something that I have struggled with over the last few weeks. But, thankfully I've got my boy here who really keeps me in check and makes sure that I am prioritizing me and I'm able to do what I need to day in and day out. So, solid 8. Things can be better. Things should be better in different areas of my life, but I'm content where I'm at right now and always striving to get better. So that's where I'm at.
Hey, striving is always it's always the good thing, man, because when you're going backwards, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something that you may want to reach out to that community in that village, like, yo, I feel like I'm going backwards and I need some help, pull me out. So which brings us to this episode. We talking about Black masculinity and mental health. Terrill, I know who you are and some of the things that you do, and I've promoted some of your work on my personal social media, but tell our community who you are and the things that you do.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor in Maryland. I don't know if I said that right. I don't know where you guys are from, but Maryland. So I love what I do. So I'm a therapist, and I primarily work in the inner city of Baltimore. I see a lot of children to seniors, right? And for me, like you said, it takes a village. I just feel like I'm just a pawn in that village, just to be used any way that I can, whether it's therapy, whatever, to kind of help out. But yeah, so that's kind of my spill and what I got going on.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
No, No, but you said you're to be used, but it's basically two questions. One, why therapy of all the professions, and two, how do you find that balance in maintaining the caseload, and then also, I know you just recently you proposed to your fiance now.
Yes, sir.
Let's
And
go.
Congratulations.
You got
But
personal life, professional life.
yeah. So how do you find that balance, man? Because in our profession, it's not easy. And I don't think any profession, if you want to be honest, but how do you find that balance? And two, why therapy?
So both conversations are a little different. But I'll address each and every one of them. But when I first had started out, Mike, it was really, really difficult for me. I'll tell you, we'll talk more about it, but through like supervision, like, you meet with your supervisor, it kind of helped me to strategize in ways that I could find balance. But therapy has started at my HBCU. I went to University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, and things wasn't always as bright and sunshines, thankfully I did get in college, but I was dismissed academically, just kind of getting caught up in different lifestyles through college life, right? And that was it, right? I was at a point in my life where I didn't know if I wanted to go back to school, but I had an advisor who actually stepped in and helped me get back in. And I always told myself, because of the work that she did for me, I always told myself I wanted to be in a chair similar to her to help the next person. I think that it was really touching. I thought I knew what I wanted, but I felt like God had a different plan for me, right? Throughout those whole 4 years, she will always be on my back. Hey, Terrill, how's it going? You caught up in this class, you need this book. And it kind of led me to the direction where I'm at now. And it was admirable, just to even be in that process. I'm pretty sure she's aware of it if she hears this, but she's already know the impact that she's had. So I kind of told myself, whatever I do, school counselor, originally wanted to be school counselor, right? I went to Hopkins to be a school counselor, right, yup. But I said, whatever I position myself to be, it was to kind of help the next individual. So that's how I, implement even in my practice as being client-centered and person-centered, just being present and helping that person. I always see that. The younger Terrill kind of needing direction. We all do. So I'm not going to sit on here and act like things was always great. But all of us in some kind of way had some kind of support, right? Whatever that might be, right? And it's always important to kind of pay that forward for the next person.
That's real. True. That's real, man. That's real. No, I was gonna follow up and just say, because we've talked on mentorship and we've talked about just support in general, but we've all, like, to your point, we've all had somebody that has advocated for us or has helped kind of pull us along. So I would love for you to talk a little bit more on that relationship that you've got with that person. Like, were they you kind of mentioned they were on your back, but like, how important was that relationship to get you where you needed to be?
So Josh, I'll keep it really, really, I call it 100, right?
Yeah.
You don't really realize how important it is until it's all said and done. So through the time, it was just being personable. When we had the teachers, your favorite teacher or your favorite counselor, whatever it is, you're comfortable to talk to them. You're comfortable to go in their room anytime. But because of that comfortability, I believe that it allowed her to make that impact. So any advice that she would give or anything that she would tell me, I would listen more, right? Do this or do that, or not in a evasive way, like saying you better, but just in a kind of approachable way, like, hey, get on top of this or do that. I was even involved in more stuff. This is opportunity that's on campus. You should get involved in. So I think later on in life, I realized, like, wow, you know what I mean? Like, this has really shaped and molded me into a better individual. So probably my junior year, I applied for grad school my senior year, but I knew that I was going to be in a position where someone was going to look at me similar to how I looked at, Dr. Harris.
Hey, that's good. You had that experience, man, and had those mentors and individual in your corner to support you, because I look at my undergrad experience. I was a first gen student, and whenever I went to NC State, it was like, what is this? And for me, I would say big fish in a small pond. So when I got to NC State, I was like the small fish in a big pond. And so it was just like a culture shock for me, and I had to find a way to adjust. And I was able to find that village, and along with that, that's how I met Gandhi. But having those other people in my corner, who basically took me under their wings and like, I'm going to support you. I know you may not know what's next or whatever, but if you listen to me, or if you trust me, I promise you, you will not fail. And it kind of brought me to counseling in a sense, because a lot of them was either educators or like counselors and therapists and fields of the helping field. And so, that's how I went to Hopkins, and, I was able to then now pay it forward, and then create opportunities for other people to join and be able to come and speak on our platform. So, having that village is so important. And which brings me to this question to ask you, do you know if, based off your opinion and living in Baltimore City and also outside of Baltimore City, do you believe the culture is making a priority to address mental illness within the community itself?
Yeah, man. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, man. I always take into consideration what's going on in the moment, right? Look at us, right? Look at all three of us. So just by looking at all three of us, it's evident that the culture is making an impact on addressing mental health, right? We're all in this space right now where we're sharing our thoughts, our feelings, and our emotions, so we can kind of see the way the culture is shaping. And I think that's powerful, just in the moment right now with us. So yes, life is perspective, right? The next person might say no, they may not pay attention to certain details and things, but for me, I pay attention to those things. And I realize that even when we're in the barbershop and the salon, that they do those wellness checks. They might not call it wellness checks, but you realize I chop it up with my barber 24/7, and you realize how just chopping it up with them is indeed a wellness check, right? They even talk to you. So even from a clinician standpoint, I know clinicians personally who provide education on certain disorders in the community, whether it's at fairs or whether it's in the school or whether it's on their social media. The culture is changing, or it has changed. I think that just by being in school, you understand how things changed over time from different generations to ours, and it's powerful. Like this platform, I told you guys that I listened to it. Each episode, there's some kind of check-in. So it shows that there has been a major impact, and we're the proof.
That's actually spot on, because I know between this platform, between the checks Mike and I have, and I've been fortunate enough, even with my dad takes the time to make sure that we're good. His friends are good. Like, we still have these talks, and like you were saying, whether it's at the barbershop, even with some of the folks that I work with at my job, just having that group and that community to just be like, yo, like, how are y'all really doing? That's been it's proof that we are moving the needle. But this actually brings me to my next point with you. The culture has changed.
Hey, again, before you move forward, I want to ask a question, because
sure, go ahead.
It ties in back to this question when he said the barbershop. Yep. I get that a lot of African American men, we associate that safe haven with the barbershop. But from your experience, and have you always lived in Baltimore City?
Well, yeah. So growing up, always been Baltimore County, Baltimore City. Of course, when I went to my HBCU, it was in Eastern Shore, Maryland, right?
Right.
But for the most part.
So three different regions in a sense. So taking it back to the barbershop, why have us men associated the barbershop as a safe haven?
You said the word have or have not?
Have. Because I hear that a lot,
Yeah, for sure. So why is it that we associate the barbershop as a safe haven?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to generalize it, right? I can tell you just from my standpoint, It's I'm sorry. It's just that space. So it depends on who you are. You know, you might not be comfortable with talking in the barbershop. You know, anything can happen. You know what I mean? But from my standpoint, you know, I talk to my barber personally, especially COVID. He has a little, you know, what do you call it, Sweden. You know, it's just me and him. So when I'm in there, we're always talking, right? So I always feel like I can talk about anything, even if it's something that may sound embarrassing. You know, he's older than I am, so he always, you know, give me his advice, or he may say something, or he might ask something from me. So every time I walk in there, it's just always a safe haven, right? I just feel comfortable that you know, we're in there for about an hour. You know, he's a little long when he shaped me up and stuff. So we in there for a minute, right? You know, the therapy session is about 30, 45 minutes, but we in there for some time. So you know, why not talk, even if we just listening to music? It's a lot of different things. And it's a lot of different feelings that come with that allows that to be a safe space, man.
Cool. And I ask that because, you know, oftentimes a lot of people who tune into our episode are not African Americans and are not all men. And so I wanted them to be able to understand and like be able to find a way to not necessarily connect to us, to basically try to match our experience, but to understand what us as Black men, what we were saying and what we're talking about. So I appreciate you for sharing your answer.
So as a follow-up, you know, you've been in therapy the last few years. I want to know what's been the most challenging part of your job, because I can imagine each day is a little different. And even going back to the previous question of we made progress in the mental health space, but what are some things that you're starting to see in the space that we're either struggling to overcome, or, you know, it's the progression's a little slower than we want it to be?
Now, are you talking, Joshua, from a clinician standpoint, or are you talking from what I'm noticing in individuals that's coming to therapy?
Let's touch on both. And
okay,
let's touch
yeah,
on
that's
both.
fine. That's fine. So I'll talk about what I noticed from individual. Oh, yep. So I'll talk about what I noticed from individuals coming into therapy. I think what I see a lot is moms, right, wanting to kind of fix their child's behavior. You know, I call it microwavable food, right? They want to give them to Terrill, and then as soon as session's over, you know, thank the Lord, he's fixed. So that's been the most challenging thing I've seen so far, and I've always explained to them that it's a process and it takes time. And being that it's therapeutic, meaning that one session we might not achieve every single maladaptive or bad behavior that you notice at home. It might take, you know, a couple of months or maybe even a year. I think I tell people all the time that for me, in the way that I kind of conduct my sessions, it's not an overnight fix. It's not at all. And I think what's been challenging for what I've seen is people have been wanting things to be like an overnight fix for them. You know, this is the problem. You know, I've been told that therapy can fix it. He's been coming to you for about a week or so now. Why, you know, why aren't things changing? So everything's perspective. But yeah, so that's been my biggest challenge. And as far as clients go, as far as clinicians go, I don't believe there's enough therapists. So whomever is listening to this and they're interested in therapy, go forward, because we need you, right? It's more clients and it's more individuals seeking therapy than it is therapists, which creates more of a burnout. I can't tell you how many times I what's the word? I kind of not assigned, but I kind of referred individuals to someone that I can trust, and they might say, okay, that person is no longer there. You know, they left, or this happened. I've been in therapy, right? I think when I was in Hopkins, I remember my professor. I can't think of it now, but I remember my professor always told me that your therapist needs a therapist, right? So we can process and work on things. But my therapist used to fall asleep on me sometimes. Right? I used to go to my therapist. Right. I used to go to my therapist at like 5 o'clock. Remind you, because I got school, I got work. So it'll be later on in the session. And yeah, you might say it's boring, but I look at that as burnout. Like he'd have seen about who knows, maybe 6 people. I don't know his schedule. But when he comes to me, he's burned out. And I noticed that to be a challenge. And the reason why that I believe that more clinicians are burning out is because there's not enough of us, and the caseloads are tremendous, right? They just send you, everyone. But over time, I learned that there's a balance to that. We got to kind of balance things out. So yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen that too, Terrill. Looking at the fact that working in a school, and sometimes right when COVID hit, as referring students to mental health services, it was earliest like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then a month or so for them to get like a psychological evaluation of some sort. And so you have to be strategic about trying to network and find people, and having those people in your connects like, hey, can you see this person so we can go ahead and process this? And so to your point, yeah, there is definitely a shortage on clinical mental health individuals in the field, but at the same time, we need the right people that want to be here. Don't do it just because you look up to Terrill and he's just like, yo, go into clinical mental health. Do it because you have a passion to listen without judgment, to be able to want to help other people, and not to fix their problem, but help them process what they're going through, and be able to sometimes you have to unlearn to relearn. And there's so much trauma to unpack, to the point where 1 week, 1 session, 1 month, 1 year may not fix that. And to that you said something that kind of touched me, was a lot of moms are bringing their kids in, and you're taking it from that microwavable approach. And for me, who was raised by his grandmother, and I ain't gonna say I was bad, but
there was bad, bro.
I like to say it was a misunderstanding between me and adult, so I put it like that. And so whatever you want to assume of that, that's up to you. But that's kind of like what she did. We tried therapy, and the man said, he told my grandma, he said, ma'am, I mean no harm, but this ain't gonna work. And so for me, I don't think they were asking the right questions. And one, I felt like they were trying to play me for a fool. But
talk about it, because that happens in sessions, man. Talk about it.
So as an individual now who has studied the profession, I'm like, that's play therapy. But as a middle schooler, I didn't know playing with blocks and like Legos and different things of the sort was a way for them to try to get information out of me. Like, how does this make you feel? All right, like connect something together and stuff like that. So, it's just helping people understand, like, therapy, yes, it's a practice, it's a process, but at the same time, it starts with you. So, which takes me to this next question, Terrill, how can people take advantage of mental health resources if they traditionally don't have access to mental health resources in their community, school, workplace, or anything like that?
Yeah. So for me, the biggest resource that I use is psychology today. Mm-hmm. We all know that. But that's for individuals, who have a laptop or phone, they can look it up over the computer. But for those who do not, there's a hotline, 211, right? And what 211 is, it allows you to kind of call in to kind of get assessed to see what's going on, for a check-in, to see if there is some support that's needed for those individuals that don't know how to kind of proceed with looking for that extra mental health support.
You speak a little bit more, you spoke on 211 and psychology today. But for me, I think in order to be able to make it to that point of wanting to get therapy, I think you have to come to some realization of some acceptance first, and you have to kind of admit that there's a problem going on, or there's something that you're not, or you just don't feel right. Something is not right. So can you talk a little bit more about that process? Because oftentimes, we say as men, we're like, yo, go to therapy. Like, yeah, man, find somebody to talk to. And that's kind of easy said and done. I'm going to tell you, man, there's a lot of things that I wasn't comfortable sharing because one, judgment. We live in a very judgmental society where a lot of societal norms are placed on men to the point where we feel like we have to prove ourselves. And why I do value that resource that you share, which is 211. I think we need to talk about that process of getting there, especially as Black men, and men in general, you know, but with being egotistical and like that male ego and like, I don't have a problem, it's you type thing. And though you may not have experienced that, but in your experience, as a clinician, can you speak more about that process?
Yeah, so like I told you, I wasn't therapist. I mean, therapist. I was in therapy, and I left on the therapist that I was seeing. So I was on the other side of making that decision. And I think oftentimes what happens is we seek therapy. And mind you, therapy is not the only way to take care of your mental health. We can talk about that as well. But oftentimes we seek therapy when there's an emergency, right? When something tragic has happened, when the flame is already in the air, things is kind of go. I need a therapist to talk to, and that's hard because not all therapists are, like you said, are ready right away. It might take a month because of the way things are so backed up. So during that process, I would advise, even when things are going okay, if you just want someone to speak to kind of prepare yourself or get that extra, what's the word? Or just prepare yourself in preparation, right? So that when something does happen, you'll be okay. But that process, Mike, is extremely intimate. And I think that us as men or us as people, we kind of skip that intimacy. And then when things get crazy, we hit the psychology today and say, hey, this is what happened. This is what, whatever the case may be, I need to speak to you.
And thank you so much, Terrill, for sharing. You spoke on something that mental health is just not about therapy. In a sense, it's a lifestyle. We can adapt a lot of things to be able to support our mental health. We just posted something on social media this week where we're talking about protecting your mental health. And for myself, that's journaling. That's not something that I have enjoyed doing in the past, but as a counselor now, I try to be more intentional but mindful in how I'm showing up. What do I need to release to be able to make it to the next day? What do I need to maybe reflect on? What do I need to incorporate? And how am I feeling? So for me, journaling is one form of taking care of my mental health. So I 100% agree with you when you said going to therapy. Going to protecting your mental health is not all about going to therapy, but it's finding solutions and strategies that'll work for you. So going to the next question, within your experience, how do Black men, Black masculinity, not necessarily Black men, how do Black masculinity norms affect the mental health of Black men?
Yeah, man, I think that for this topic is really unique and special. Why? Because I'm not sure if everyone kind of associates with African American, but right. I know that me being an African American male, being a Black male, and with some other brothers on the line, it's important. So what I kind of want to do is I kind of want to give my spiel on what Black masculinity norm is, and you guys, if possible, can kind of agree or disagree.
Sure.
And we can go from there. So the first thing I see is strength, right? Being strong, right? Another thing, a Black masculinity norm is being the aggressor, right? Assertive, aggressive, right? Dominant, and also just superior, right? That's Black masculinity norm that society has placed on us. So I kind of want to get you guys spill on, you disagree, if there's something that you want to add on your idea of what Black masculinity norm is to you guys.
I think all in all, I would 100% agree to that, in a sense of when it comes to the aggressor and how society has placed that norm on us based on media. And I use an example, and I don't know the exact term for it, but I use an example of how Black men are portrayed in society. and also viewed in society, in a sense of, for example, you have heard where Black men could be sitting in the car, and a white woman is walking down the street, and next thing you know, she's like crossing over because she don't want to make contact. Another one, it could be reversed, where a white woman is sitting in her car and she see a Black man coming, and next thing you know, you hear the doors locked, because that's how society has portrayed us to be. But then going back to the actual Black man, I think it goes back to how we were raised, in a sense. Many of us were raised by our moms, or moms or grandmas or another family member, and we were told, and I know for me, specifically me, you have to take care of your family. You have to do what you need to do to make sure you provide. A man provides, a man take out the trash. It's what a man is. And so all throughout my journey and my story, that's kind of like what I live by. And we internalize a lot of values that were passed down culturally, and sometimes I consider as taught the wrong things by the right people, because sometimes a lot of those traditions and norms are very toxic, and it's not conducive to an individual who is trying to establish himself, while also walking to the his particular calling. But going back to the question directly, there's a lot of things that make up Black masculinity, but I think society has told us that we have to be strong, even though we may be hurting inside. We have to provide. We can't take a day off. The day that we take off will be the day that we'll be in our grave. And just putting unnecessary, I'm not gonna say heartache, but unnecessary weight on what a Black man is, and therefore you get people who either conform or don't conform, and then that's when they create this whole different type of what a Black man is. And and we could talk about that as well, but that's my take on it, without over analyzing the question.
Yeah, and I'll actually follow up with that, because I don't want to continue to just add, but it's stress. It's unnecessary stress. To Mike's point, having to constantly show strength, constantly be the person that is the go-to for the household. I've been blessed enough where my dad told me it was okay to cry. But I've seen that from friends, other relatives, other folks who are in my circle. That's not the norm. And so it's one of those things where when we think about Black masculinity, it's all of the things that were already talked about, but it's also like, it's okay to cry. It's okay to show a little bit of weakness. Of course, we want to pass that along because there's a lot of generational stuff, but there's a lot. I'll end it there.
And I also add one more thing, Terrill, and you can speak more onto this for us, like being in inner city, because this is very different in rural. But like growing up in the rural, like my generation, we spent more time outside.
Mm-hmm.
We we did some of everything. Played in the woods, just did like crazy, wild, living young, wild, and free. But now, like this generation, like the man definition it's completely polar opposite in a sense, where we are more so, I'm not gonna say pro-choice, but we are learning to say, you know what, create your own definition of who you want to be it, live it, but most importantly, have self-respect for yourself. And whatever you're comfortable with, that's what you're comfortable with. But in our household or in my family, these are the expectations. So you have the opportunity to have like those cultural values, like F though and F no, and like how you associate with certain parts of your culture, but then certain other parts you don't necessarily associate with. I think all of that kind of makes that particular definition of Black masculinity.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate that. So, that's my whole spiel on what society kind of sees as a Black man, and you guys added it to it, right? It's I don't want to say fictional, but it's what's kind of already been painted, for us already to kind of be strong. what's been painted for us to be the assertive individual. We'll walk into a room, Mike, don't get mad. You know what I mean? If something was to happen, okay, he's going to get upset. Us to kind of be superior, right? It's like, okay, you being the male, you're the dominant, you're superior. And that's what I believe has been, societal norms on men, African American men in general.
How does that? Let me ask you a follow-up question to that. From all the factors and the pressures that as Black men we face in society, psychologically, like how much of from your experience, how much of an impact has that had on either clients that you may have or just things you've seen day in and day out? Because I know, we've seen it, like Black athletes, like, or for most kids, like, you have to be an athlete to get out of here, or you got to be a rapper, or you've got to do this, you got to do this. So it's like society puts us in this box of like, this is what we have to be, or this is what we have to accomplish. But in reality, like, that's not the case. And we know that things are changing in the dynamic, but from your experience, how much does that really affect, whether it's children, it can be adults, it can be, the generation that may have came before and passed down? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Josh, it's dependent on the household. I think you was a perfect example when you say your household was different. So as far as children, depending on the household and how they was raised, that can be true or not. I think from what I've seen, coming into therapy sessions, some men don't like to talk, right? From my experience, there are more female individuals that seek therapy than it is men. And everything that I just spoke about, as far as, what I believe African American societal norms are, therapy kind of contradicts that, because it wants you to be vulnerable, right? And society might look at, perspective, to each his own. Society might look at vulnerability as a contradiction to strength and things of that nature. So when we think about the word vulnerability, we don't want to kind of let everything go, right? Because that allows a person to kind of, quote unquote, gain one up on us, right? I think I had an individual that even told me that, during session, like, that allows a person to kind of gain one up on you. So therapy kind of contradicts those society norms. It's like, man, I can't go in session, become weak. Now Terrill may know these things about me, and if things was to ever happen, Terrill has one up on me. And I think that creates unintended stress that they might not even realize. And some brothers might come to session and be extremely comfortable after a few sessions, like, wow, I didn't think that I would be able to talk. I had some brothers in sessions that said, I didn't think that I would want to talk, but, it feels good to actually let that out. I've never let that out before, right? So we recognize that vulnerability equals strength. But from what I see, because of those norms, it kind of contradicts the whole therapy thing. We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to talk about what we got going on. I've heard people say, no one cares. I don't want to be a burden. But we realize, and just from us talking, Mike, and Josh, that vulnerability gives us strength, man, I tell you.
I agree with that. And I guess going to this, what are some ways, and we all have the right to have our own viewpoints, but what are some ways or suggestions that you would probably give to, in a sense, to dismantle that, where speaking about your feelings, vulnerability in general is not masculine. What are some suggestions to dismantle that? Because not only I heard that when it comes to sessions like that, like therapeutic sessions, but also in relationships, when you are talking to a lady and she like, well, my partner don't know how to be vulnerable, and like it's frustrating. And so do you mind speaking on that? Like, how can we, in a sense, create more awareness or strategies to dismantle that viewpoint of vulnerability is not masculine?
Right. So one, I guess, kind of just to paint a picture for you guys, like we mentioned earlier, us as men, similar to women, us as people in general, carry a lot of baggage, right? And when we become vulnerable, we allow ourselves to sit that baggage down, put it on the floor, be able to get it off our back. So imagine yourself with a heavy load, being able to put it on the floor. And once you stand back up, you feel a lot better. And that's how I kind of see it. Being vulnerable allows you to sit that baggage down. I don't want to say that, it's contradictory when someone says, I don't want to be vulnerable because, it has shown me that it's weak. I just kind of, whether it's through psychoeducation or letting them know, kind of show them that, hey, you're able to kind of let your burdens go for a second, right? Let some of that stuff go and talk about it. Because actually, the more burdens we carry, the more weaker we become, right? Every day, life brings us stress. And therapy is not going to, I always tell people, I wish I had a wand to just stop all the stressful events that happen to us, right? And everybody gets well. But we're just learning to cope with that stress. So if we already have stress that's from yesterday's, why would we come out into the world to add more to that stress from today, right? Some of those things we actually got to let go so we can continue to just fight or to just be productive citizens, right? To just live.
I'm telling you, stress, and we've talked about this before, stress will take you out. I mean, whether it's your health, psychologically, like it will have an impact. I know I've experienced it. Mike has experienced it. I've had other friends who have gotten sick or gotten ill just because of stress. And a lot of that could have been avoided if it were, let's have a conversation, or let's create a space for you to talk about what's going on in your life. Or, hey, if you weren't aware of these resources, here's some things that can help you either cope with it. And I don't like to use cope, but help alleviate some of the things that may be going on in your day-to-day life. So that way, as to your point, you can continue to show up and you can continue to bring your best self, or, just be good day in and day out.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Gandhi. Stress. I think in order for someone to understand the importance of stress, they have to know how the brain works, how your body works, how you function daily. It's just like health disparities, in the sense like you got to know how those foods and those lack of resources to healthy living impacts you on a daily basis, because that can, in a sense, connect to with stress. So for stress for me, when it comes to stress for me, I personally, that's why I started going to therapy. Some situations, they just become unbearable, and then when I realized it was impacting my relationships and performances, and I had no other choice. I had to do what I had to do, and it wasn't, for me, it wasn't necessary. It wasn't therapy. It was controlled substance, and it was, taking advantage of different opportunities, and just, in a sense, damaging my body, damaging my relationships, and just damaging me in general, my reputation, my name. And so when we talk about these types of things, it's not because, we're bashing other people, because that's never our intentions. But it's more so to create awareness on how everything kind of unfolds, how each factor of our life and how each thing that we do or we choose to engage in, how it impacts something else. Like what you do today can impact what you do tomorrow and the years to come. And so, again, I just wanted to share that and like open up about that, because a lot of people who listen to us, sometimes they write me and say, yo, I appreciate you for sharing that, because I would have never thought of that. I would have never actually even came to the realization of being able, or coming to a part in my life where I can share that on the air. So I appreciate you for sharing that, Gandhi and Terrill.
Yeah, for sure, man. It just shows how human we all are, right? I think that sometimes individuals may paint the picture that I may know it all, that I'm the expert, because being in mental health, that I can withstand all, or not withstand, but I can take all stress. you know what I mean, and be a superhero and not be affected. Your point just shows how human I think that we all are. And it's important that we're even speaking about it now because it brings validation to that, to people who may not see it that way, who may be afraid. And that's where these sessions come in. You realize how your story just proves that you're human and that you're still working on yourself. And every day, we're not done, but every day is an extra moment to continue to work and get better.
Agree 100%.
I'm with it. And speaking of that, man, and we've kind of talked about the barbershop moments, and we even just spoke on this right now, but how can others really take the time to support support mental health in the Black community, support going and getting help, or just in general, like what can people do to ensure that we are moving that needle, especially in our community, so that way we can continue to overcome either the stereotypes or the things that we have to deal with day in and day out, so that way mental health is a priority.
Yeah. So it's important to be mindful of oneself, in my opinion, right? We all have different various things that goes on, and when we become mindful, we're aware of our thoughts, our feelings about things, and even our body sensations, the way our body, reacts. In that case, you become aware, and you'll be able to take care of those things that you need to take care of for yourself, right? I've always been an advocate of, if we're able to heal, then we create stronger communities, right? And in order to heal, we have to understand what's going on within ourselves and be able to take care of the things that we got to take care of. Even for myself, being a therapist, like I mentioned, I still have things that I have to address in my own life, right? In order to help someone else out. So to kind of answer your question, it's important for us to be mindful of what we have going on in our lives. Pay extremely important attention to how certain things make us feel. How certain things kind of affect the way we move our hands, or if our hands get a little tight or sweaty or whatever the case may be, and address those things within our own selves, to get stronger and better mentally. Because then in return, we improve others. We improve other, situations and scenarios in our lives.
I agree with that, man. And you spoke a lot about mindfulness. I wonder if you can touch on it a little bit more. What is mindful meditation, and how might others be able to participate in that? And are there any type of resources out there, like simple resources where people can maybe incorporate from the comforts of their home?
Yep. So being mindful is exactly, what we kind of just talked about. Being aware of your thoughts, being aware of your feelings, and being aware of body sensations. That allows you to kind of assess how things are going for you. Because sometimes us as men, or us as people, but I'm addressing us because we're all men here, we think things are okay and they're not. So mindfulness allows us to kind of just be aware, right, of what's happening in the moment. One of the beautiful things that I see a lot now is kids doing yoga. You know what I mean? That's an activity for mindfulness, of being aware of what's going on, yoga, stretches. And I see adults doing it as well. One interesting study that I read upon was in 2016 at Brown University, that stated that women gain more from mindfulness classes than men do. And that kind of what that kind of meant to me, and how that stuck out to me, was just that we don't pay attention to what we need or what we have going on, us as men. Even when it comes to hospital visits, we kind of brush things off. I'll take care of it. I'll do it later on. And that's exactly what mindfulness is. It kind of allows you to assess, to say, hey, I need to take care of this first. You know what I mean? I need to kind of address this in my life because this is what I got going on for me.
I ain't gonna lie, man. Mindful meditation is where it's at. Because working in the school system, I've learned a lot about ADHD, and it's like a buzzword now. And so that is something that I have incorporated, even when I do like my guided lessons in the classroom. Like just practicing mindfulness, and like before I start any lesson, And before I even go into trying to get to know who the kids are, you know, it's just all about coming in and then talking about it and then just allowing them to, like, I'm not going to say dismiss everything that they have going on, but living in the moment to enjoy and release it for the time being, because you don't know what you may receive now may help you dismantle what you're going through or what your experiences, or it may give you an eye opener. It may be eye opening, or it may not help you at all. You never know. But I 100% agree. I myself and actually partake in such activities. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, how many times have we been on the phone, Mike, where you like count? You got to breathe, Josh. Like, relax. And a lot of that is just like you always bring up to me. It's just like, be aware of where you're at. This is what's going on. Take it one step at a time, but you got to breathe. And so, you know, to your point, Mike, like, it's needed. It's needed day to day.
Yeah. And Terrill, something that we haven't talked about yet, and it kind of takes me back to, you know, we were talking about how different environments kind of put more strain on us. And if we're not mindful, or if we're not aware of our situations that we're in, it can cause stress, which brings me to the point, you know, we talk about in previous episodes, professionalism. We talk about work ethic. We talked about a whole lot of things, but we don't necessarily talk about code switching.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, as men,
can you repeat that, Mike? Can you repeat that? What was that? Code switching?
Code switching.
Yep.
So I'm not for sure if I know some people in our audience have, but if you haven't watched Sorry to Bother You, it's when I forgot homie's name, but he was working at a call center and he called in his normal voice. He was like, "Hey, what's going on, sir? My name is blah blah blah," and then it said click. And then that's when homie was just like, "All right, so this is how you have to do it. You have to call in, you got to meet them where they are, and then you got to do it like this." And then he said, "Hi, sorry to say something." And then, you know, it was just that whole code switch, and the receiver was just like, "Hey, yeah, thank you so much for calling. Let me get my pocketbook so I can go ahead and get that card number for you." It was just like, dang, you can't take me as I am, but you can take me if I put on this front for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that, because not only does that impact Black men, Black masculinity, and all these other factors, but that impacts our platform as well. When we talk about show up as your authentic self. So do you mind speaking a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure, man. I think that you you hit a soft spot, right? You know, we've all been there where we want to adjust to the room, so to say. You know what I mean? If we're in an environment where it's not a lot of people, you know, that look like us, we kind of adjust to the room. And I think that that's one who hasn't identified their full identity yet. You know, and that's something to kind of explore in therapy. That means that there's some things that we can work on within ourselves, because again, we talked about societal norms. You know, we may relate to that. You know, it got to be somewhere where we can fit in, and that person may not know where to fit in yet, because ultimately, you know, we are what kind of you know, pushes ourselves forward, not being someone else, being, like you said, your authentic self. And when a person is not able to be their authentic self in a room of strangers, you know, those are things that we do work on in therapy, dealing with one's identity and what that means to them, right? How they kind of view their identity, or how they believe others view them. It's a lot to explore in that scenario for a person to kind of, I can't do the voice, right? But I know what you're saying. It's a lot to explore in that, and to why one needs to be accepted by having that voice, instead of their true voice. That's a lot to explore, Mike, and just, you know, and that's a lot to dive deep in, for real.
Yeah, and it kind of brings me to the you know, how race, class, sexuality, how all of that kind of, in a sense, impact Black men's mental health, because of so many societal factors. Would you like to speak to that?
Can you repeat that? You said
Yeah. So you know, we was talking about like code switching, and in a sense that impacts like socioeconomic status, a person's social economic status, because sometimes some people call it you doing what you got to do to get the job, but some people call it is I do what I need to do so that I can put food on the table. And you know, people have different approaches, but I wonder if you could talk about how like class, race, and sexuality, how all of those impact Black men in their mental health.
Sure. So there's two various different things you just mentioned, right? Class,
Mm-hmm.
race, sexuality, how all of that impacts them. I can speak about me. I can't generalize and speak about everyone else, but what I can imagine is that, you know, in certain scenarios for certain different classes, life is a lot different, right? People view life differently in each different class, right? For example, I'll say a person who works a 9 to 5 every day might not view life from a person who doesn't and is on a boat in the ocean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they bought time, they can do that. You know, stress is a lot different, and for an individual to sometimes say, you know, I got to be that individual to move up in a social class. Again, to me, that's some kind of identity crisis, right? To believe that we have to do that. In a sense, now there are some things that's not said, right? For example, the way life operates, you know, certain people it's harder to kind of get a certain, you know, way out of life, right? They say because of this color of your skin, you might not get that high CEO job. It might be someone of a different complexion, right? But I would question, hey, if you change your voice to meet that person at that higher level, do you think they still would show you respect? They might not. They might or they might not. That's up for debate, right? But the key question is that identity crisis thing. You know, you still got to be true to you. You know, do what makes you happy. But as far as different social classes, life is different in my eyes throughout each class. Like for example, I tell people all the time, it's hard to take care of your mental health if you can't even put food on the table, right? We're in session.
Come on, yes,
Yep.
Right. No, we're in
yes.
session because Michael, you talk about different social classes, and that's the reality of things. We get in session and we work on stress, but once we leave and once we get off the phone or you know get out of session, they deal with real world, you know, shit, right? They deal with real world stuff, bill collectors and different things that they really cannot or individuals might not be able to afford, and that adds stress in itself.
Yes, I 100% agree. And I asked that question not for you to necessarily side with me, but I asked that question for you to draw awareness to that because people, it is it is needed to understand that regardless, you can receive career counseling, psychological services, any type of services that you want to, but if you're going back in the same environment that is causing that stress or that is causing that friction or dysfunction, then it's going to be hard. And no, it may be easy to some. It's going to vary depending on the person, but it's going to be a process to overcome. And you know, I asked that question for another reason. Is for one, to kind of see how like the ecological system impacts human self, and you know how community, how school, and all these other factors just impacts how we make decisions. Which brings us to to a close in a sense, Terrill. You know, we talked about a lot of things on the show today, but I wonder if you could, as a mental health therapist, and as an individual who's an advocate for mental health, um, do you mind sharing some resources that our audience can tap into to be able to support their mental health and also to maybe be- look into getting their therapeutic services? I know you talked about psychology today.
Yep.
That is a good resource, and that is
Yep.
currently on our mind treatment page that we have. But also, if you have any other resources, please do feel free to share.
Yep. They have tons of apps on the phone. Better Me, different mental health apps where you can just tap in over the phone alongside 211. One interesting thing that I kind of found out was that even in the police department, there's a mental health unit that kind of comes out instead of the police. That well, I'm not sure how it's within every state, but I've noticed, here in Maryland, there's a unit that will come out to address that crisis mentally for people. So,
Really?
but listen, guys, it's out there. The support is there. We live in an era where we can't say that the support is not there. A lot of things are on the media for us to see. Even you fellas, posting everything. It's out there for us to see, and it's there. So it's a lot of information out there. Psychology Today, 211, Better Me. Even within the police department, if you don't want the cops, can I have the mental health unit or something to come out to kind of see me? It's there for us.
Is the mental health within the police force, is that something new? I've seen it on TV far as like in movies or whatnot, but I have not seen it far as in reality.
I'm not sure, Mike. I need to do my own research on that, brother. But I don't know. I know that I've been in sessions where I've had to kind of call the authorities, and they sent out their mental health unit to kind of see how severe, the crisis unit to kind of see if it was severe.
Something like a mobile crisis.
Right.
Like. Okay. I've seen like mobile crisis and whatnot, but interesting. Okay. But yeah, appreciate you for sharing those resources, man. We would definitely add them to our mind treatment page. And again, Terrill, as we begin to wrap up, just thank you so much for being a part of our show today. But before we close, how can people stay plugged in, stay in contact with you? I know a part of your practice, you oftentimes promote like different events that you're doing. I also know you and your fiance has like a clothing line. So tell our audience a little bit more about how they can stay in contact and follow you on social media, and support some of your movements.
Yes.
Yep. So my Instagram is my first and last name, Terrill Mcknight. You can contact me through email. That email is healingmindsforhealth@gmail.com. Healingmindsforhealth@gmail.com. And the Protect My Peace brand is still up and coming. We're still trying to figure out some logistics, but you can also follow that on IG as well too. Protect My Peace. That's a clothing line that my fiance has, and she started just to kind of, with her and her girlfriends, to kind of protect their peace and always have something to remember that, listen, we gotta put out our mental first in certain things to protect our peace, right? It is a lot going on out here, and they're figuring out ways to kind of get that moving as well.
Cool, man. Cool. So again, well, thank you so much for being a part of our show today. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. We need more opportunities like this. We were tapped into What's Good, bro. That I think they started, Aaron Muller and them, they started it like two years ago when COVID first hit.
It was during COVID.
We need more spaces where men can just engage in community and just have discussions about whatever the case may be. So again, thank you so much for being part of the show. It's the power of a growth mindset, but most importantly, it all starts with you.